Hey folks, thanks for tuning in to another edition of the Veritas Road podcast. Before we get to the fun, we just wanted to introduce you guys to our new partner, FNX Fitness.
Yeah, I've been having trouble sleeping for about 2 years now, and we don't have to get into why, but I've picked up some FNX Relax sleep aid. It's got some ashwagandha, some melatonin, all kinds of good stuff that'll help you drift off to sleep. Take one of these and sleep on a flat surface, and I guarantee you your sleep's going to improve.
Yeah, I mean, I tried out 2 of those before I handed them off to you, and it was fantastic. And I've been using their Refuel protein powder, which is delicious. I've been using their chocolate malt flavor. It's really good. Dissolves super well in milk, almond milk, water, whatever you want to use. And it's great for recovery. I've been using it post-workout for about a month now. And it's worked out super well. It's got a good whack of protein in there, some branched chain amino acids. It's good stuff. And they sell a full line of fitness supplements, sleep aids. They even have a new CBD line coming out, as well as some clothing as well. So you can go there for all of your fitness needs, really.
Yeah, if you're already using this kind of stuff, we could appreciate helping us out, helping the show out, helping FNX out, and helping yourself out. It's a win-win for everybody. If you use the discount coupon or whatever at checkout, Veritas Road 15, you get 15% off of whatever you're buying.
Yeah, all lowercase, Veritas Road 15, you get 15% off. So, I mean, who doesn't like 15%?
Yeah, we'll put that link in the show notes / description of wherever you're watching or listening to this show.
Yeah, guys, so thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you soon. Hello, and thanks for tuning in to another edition of the Veritas Road podcast. Carson back here with Murph, and it's our Christmas special. I'm super excited.
That's right. Merry Christmas, ho ho ho, Happy Holidays, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa,
and all that good stuff.
Yeah, whatever you want to add to it.
Yeah, it's going to be a good holiday. It's a dreary, Tuesday evening right now when we're recording this?
Yes, Wednesday? It's raining. It's 56 degrees. It's going to be like 19 degrees tomorrow, so we got a storm coming.
Yeah. So just a disclaimer from the top, we're about to talk about some controversial stuff, I think.
Yeah, this one will be for sure the most controversial yet.
Yeah. It's been kind of an easy ride so far, but it's time to start delving into some difficult topics.
Yeah.
And we're going to get there.
Exactly. We just want to emphasize that we're going to leave links to pretty much all the stuff we're talking about, and that you need to decide for yourself what you think about all this.
Yeah.
And hold anything that I might say or Carson might say up to eyewitness interviews, all these reports. I mean, the show notes in this one is going to be probably like a big old block of stuff.
It's going to look like a term paper.
There you go.
Yeah, but, I mean, as always, just hold everything up to the lens of logic. That's the big thing, is just analyzing the information that you take in, whatever that information may be.
Yes.
Do your own research and decide for yourself. That's the big thing.
And we're not out to offend anybody affected by this event. We feel for you, and this is in no way a personal slight against anyone. Any victim of this or anyone involved.
Yeah, right. So we were sitting down and talking a while back, and kind of discussing the big events of our lives, right? Like,
yep.
Our parents, maybe they lived through, well, my parents lived through a lot more than yours did, because my family's old.
Yeah, because they're age of grandparents.
Right, yeah. So, like, for my parents, like, my dad almost got drafted for Vietnam, and, they lived through, like, the Cold War and all that stuff, and, like, our grandparents lived through, like, World War II, and, well, mine lived through more than World War II. Again, my family's old.
Yeah, my grandfather was born the year after World War II, so let's not get caught in this tangent, though.
Yeah.
Keep talking.
Point being is, during our lives, we haven't, up until 2020, we haven't lived through a whole lot of significant events, with the exception of 9/11.
Yeah.
That's been kind of the event that's defined our generation, I think, specifically. Yeah. I mean, don't you think so?
Yeah, I mean, we were just in second grade when it happened, but it's still just so clear in my memory, and it changed so much in life. And the fact for me to notice that, even when I was a kid, is how monumental it changed stuff.
Yeah, I mean, my memory of it is really foggy. Like, I just don't remember a lot from, like, before late high school. I don't remember much, but the fact that I even know, like, I don't know. The fact that I remember anything going down at all is impressive because most of that period of time for me is just a black fog. I mean, what do you remember about it? That's always the question, right? Like, where were you when it went down?
Yeah, well, I remember it very clearly. I was in second grade, Miss Grimes' class. I had a stomach ache because everybody else was at PE. I was sitting, if you were facing towards the old bathrooms in our elementary school, you're facing down that hallway in that direction. I was sitting on a little beanbag to the right in the classroom, the top right of the classroom, staring up at the TV in the corner, okay? I remember it just so clearly. And Miss Grimes turns on the TV. I'm the only one in there, and then I see the iconic images.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That was one of those things where, like, I, as a second grader, because I was also in Miss Grimes' class, for anyone who's interested.
Yes.
We were in the same class.
Benita Grimes.
That's crazy. I remember, like, it was one of those events, like, this is going to sound very depressing and morbid, like when my grandparents died, I didn't understand the significance of what was really going on. And that was another one of those moments. Like, I didn't get it. I knew everybody was sad and angry and upset, but I didn't really grasp the full gravity of everything that was happening.
Yeah. Well, you can in second grade, but we knew it was significant.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy.
It's still crazy thinking about everything that happened that day. And everything that came from it, with the changes in air travel, with the homeland security, with the war on terror, with everything that followed.
Yeah,
like it's the first 20 years of the new millennium has been defined by that.
Yeah, it really has been. Like, from what I understand, way back when, you used to be able to just hop on a plane.
Yeah,
and after that went down,
nope.
things changed.
Yeah.
Things changed. Now you got to show up at the airport like 3.5 days before you actually want to fly somewhere.
Take your shoes off, take your belt off, walk through a metal detector.
Yeah.
You better not say any kind of buzzwords, no joking.
Doing a strip cheese in the middle of the airport just to get on the airplane.
The TSA will just like totally just take everything. I don't need to get caught up in that.
The first time I ever flew, I got pulled into it was 8th grade. We were on a trip to Washington, and I got pulled into one of those terrifying glass booths, like little innocent Carson, who never done anything remotely sketchy in his life, gets pulled into one of those booths.
Boom.
With a terrifying guy in a uniform.
Yes.
And he starts poking and prodding and rubbing me down with his stick. It scared me to death.
Little Carson, 14-year-old Carson is a terrorist.
Yeah, right. Like what am I in 8th grade going to be doing? Yeah, gosh, it was crazy. So, I mean, it was an iconic event, and I really don't remember much about what was going on. So, I mean, walk us through the whole deal.
Well, I know I've researched this quite heavily 2 years ago. I really haven't done so much since, but basically, late summer 2001, Tuesday, 4 planes were. I'm just going to try to go over the official story, okay?
Yeah.
4 planes were hijacked by Muslim extremists, 19 hijackers. Mohammed Atta was an Egyptian guy. He was the ringleader. I believe he was on American Airlines Flight 11. Wasn't that it? So there's four flights, American Airlines Flight 11. That's the one that went into the North Tower. I wrote it down there. United Airlines Flight 77? That was the Pentagon. No, American Airlines Flight 77 in the Pentagon. Read it for me, Carson. I wrote it down. Flight 93 crashed in a field in Pennsylvania. And what was the last one? Hurry up.
Let's see. The Pentagon was Flight 77.
Yes.
Yeah, Flight 93 was in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. I didn't know about that.
Yes. Okay. You just still didn't answer my question. What was the one that hit the South Tower? It's United Airlines something.
United Airlines Flight 175.
175. Thank you. Okay, so 4 planes, 2 American Airlines, 2 United Airlines, all going to various targets in New York City and Washington D.C. The North Tower was hit first. I think it was 8:46 in the morning. I could be wrong on that. Fact checkers. Don't eat me alive for that. It was near then.
Those independent fact checkers will get you, bro.
Yeah, fact checkers. Independent fact checkers. You kind of butchered that a little bit.
My mouth's a little dry.
Yeah. Drink some water. So
thanks for that advice.
Yeah. North Tower got hit first. And just imagine, people initially thought it was just fire. They were like, "What the heck's really going on?"
People thought it was just a fire.
Yeah, just imagine the shock of that.
Yeah.
Like, that's never happened before. It's never happened again. Still thinking about it kind of gets crazy.
Yeah.
The North Tower, there was a lot of people were saying it was an explosion. No one was really talking about plane at that point. I believe there's a bunch of French people doing a documentary on the New York Fire Department. And they're the only ones that got video of the North Tower, the first plane hitting the North Tower that we know of.
Wow. Okay.
I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure that's true. I'm looking at my invisible producer over there who knows a lot about this too. So that's what's happening for any of you watching this and not listening. South Tower gets hit, I want to say like 20-something minutes later. And I think it's hit a little, I can't remember which one's lower. One of them got hit, the North Tower got hit on the 91st floor, I believe. The South Tower was like 70-something. 20 minutes later, and by that time, people knew something's really wrong. This ain't no accident. Like, something is real bad wrong. But still, the sense of panic wasn't there. The sense of real panic. It was like, well, something's wrong. Everybody's evacuating. What's happening? But it's not like. Why
would you not be panicking at that point?
It's extreme concern, but an hour and 42 minutes later is when the panic happens, because that's when the tower collapses.
Okay.
And dude, we're just watching videos of that. It's just mind-boggling.
Yeah, it really is.
Like, those buildings are giant.
Yeah.
They're both 110 stories a pop, and they just come down instantly.
Horrifying.
I'm talking. It was like 9-something seconds. I've watched a million videos on this. I think it was like 9.7 seconds or something.
Oh my gosh!
Boom, down. South Tower came down
in the middle
first.
of New York City.
Oh yeah, South Tower came down first. It was the one that was hit second. North Tower came down last. It was the one that hit first. So kind of 1, 2, 2, 1.
Wow.
So like ATTA for anybody who might want to research that.
Isn't that a Star Wars thing?
No, that's AT-AT.
Oh, okay.
All-terrain assault something.
My bad.
A transport. Thank you. That's the initial New York stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, we're skipping over a ton of stuff we can get back to in a minute, but I mean, bizarre.
Super bizarre.
Awful.
Horrifying.
Just
Absolutely
so much
horrifying.
to unpack. How did it even happen? How in the world? Like, are these guys had to have been like freaking Tom Cruise level fighter pilots just to even hit the things, if you think about it.
Yeah, I mean yeah, you're probably right.
It's just unbelievable the amount of precision that went into all this. But we'll go to the Pentagon quickly. Pentagon was hit. The Pentagon was undergoing some renovations, I believe, where it got hit. I think it was in the Department of Defense accounting sector. Finance or something. It allegedly got hit by a plane. I say allegedly because there's really no pictures of it. I think they released like a couple frames like 2 years after. It might have been way longer. A camera from like a toll booth, and then maybe one near a gas station. I think there's only 2 different shots of it being released. So it's a super weird situation. The Pentagon's made up of 5 sides. Obviously, it's a Pentagon, and 5 rings in like an interior courtyard. I think the thing penetrated all the way to the C ring.
Wow, okay.
It didn't do too much damage, especially not at first, but then kind of the facade fell later, but still not really that bad damage. They had repaired it like within a year.
Wow.
And then the final plane was one that crashed in a field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania.
I wasn't aware of that one.
Yeah, they claim that was headed for the Capitol or the White House. That to me, this is all interesting to me and terrible. Again, I want to emphasize that for anybody, if you know anybody that lost their life or was damaged from that day, I feel for you, and I'm not trying to slight anyone's memory in any way. But it's interesting.
Yeah, it's one of those morbidly fascinating things, like Jack the Ripper, or the Unabomber. Like,
yeah, exactly.
How in the world did this stuff happen? How did it come about? People have I don't understand, and that's a topic for another day. But like, people's morbid fascination with events like that or people like that, it blows my mind.
Well, the one in the Flight 93 that crashed in Shanksville, the story is that the passengers fought back. And they took control of the aircraft, and they couldn't fly it because they're not pilots. So, and it crashed.
Oh my gosh!
That's the official story. I believe Todd Beamer was involved in that. Jeremy something. What was the Jeremy guy's name? Jeremy something. Todd Beamer's the only one I can think of. He's the guy that was like, "Let's roll." Anyway, we'll get back to that.
Yeah,
that's kind of the main story, and then the last little part of the main story is that at like 3 p.m. Hey, look at 5 p.m. Yeah, look that up just to confirm that. Invisible producer John. Another building fell. Did you know that?
Another building fell.
In New York City, there were 3 World Trade Center buildings that fell. A lot of people don't even know that.
I thought it was the whole thing was like the Twin Towers falling.
Well, it was World Trade. There are 7 different buildings at the World Trade Center complex.
Yeah.
Owned by the Port Authority, I believe. Or maybe it's leased by the Port Authority. I can't remember. It was leased by the Port Authority of New York. Fact checkers, if I get that one slightly wrong, it had something to do with the Port Authority. But Building 7 came down at 5:20 p.m. in the afternoon.
So they were hit by a plane, or?
Nope. The official story is it got hit by a little bit of debris. There was fire burning on, I think, like 4 floors, 12 floors. 12th floor. Okay, so it was only 1 floor. There was fire burning on 1 floor, and it just went down, apparently, due to structural damage. And we'll get into that a little bit. We will get into that because if you watch videos of that thing falling, it's weird. They're all weird, but it's really weird.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the official story. I don't know too much about the hijackers. One of them left. Some of them left Boston. Were they all leaving Boston? Invisible producer. I don't remember. A lot of them left Boston International Airport. It's super weird, man, because like at that time they didn't really have cameras, totally working, or totally like the infrastructure that we think of being at the airport was not really like that then.
Right.
So it was like, well, how do you even know who got on that plane, other than the?
I can't even imagine having to ask that question at this point.
Yeah.
Like, there's so much security. Every person that even makes it into like the area where you might get on a plane.
Yeah. I don't know, dude. It's a lot of stuff went down, a lot of stuff changed. That's a very quick rehash of the official story.
So, that's the story that we've heard many times, probably.
Oh yeah.
It was played over and over again throughout the course of
every single news station, Fox, CNN, MSNBC, liberal, conservative, moderate, every single one of them.
Yeah, was covering it.
Yeah, and it was they were all saying the same thing, and I believed it.
Yeah,
I was like it was like, oh, the Muslims have attacked us. These Muslims have attacked us.
Right.
They hate our freedom. They hate America because we're free, and we were like, so let's go to war.
Yeah. And then we go to war with Iraq and Iran and Afghanistan for like the next 10 years.
Not
right?
Iran yet, but Iraq and Afghanistan, yes, and Yemen, and we're still at war. 19 years later.
Are we really still at war with the Middle East?
Dude. Yeah.
What are we fighting over at this point?
Excellent question. We are still over there. Just what is even going on there? It's like it's crazy, man.
That's one of the big things that bothered me about the whole ordeal. Is like, okay, so I get like the whole war on terror thing. Like that makes logical sense, right? Why there's still a military presence there now doesn't make logical sense. Assuming like we're gonna accept the mainstream narrative, why we're still there doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I guess we can talk a little bit about who was responsible.
So we haven't gotten. I don't even know who's responsible. Still, I know like was the Saddam Hussein deal for a long time.
Yeah, immediately everybody within like an hour, everybody was saying it's Osama bin Laden.
Yeah,
had they known so fast, who knows? but Osama bin Laden, he did it. He was responsible for the 1993 bombings, allegedly. So he was the one who did this. He was the leader of Al Qaeda, which is a Muslim extremist who were in Sudan and who moved to Afghanistan in the 80s, I believe. They had started becoming radicalized when the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan in the 1970s. CIA kind of funded Al Qaeda to fight against the Soviet Union. Osama bin Laden was one of their main assets. So, believe it or not, America worked with him in the 70s to stop the Soviets.
What?
Yeah, and I might be not getting all the details right on that, but most of that is fairly accurate. And I think Osama bin Laden was he was like the leader, and the kind of political or religious motivation behind it. I don't think he did, or at least the official story is he didn't really do most of the planning. That was a dude named Khalif Sheikh Mohammed. I can't say Khalif Sheikh Mohammed. Is that how you say it?
You trying to say anything that's not English is a fun time.
Yeah, I'm not, as you can see, I'm not Arabic, and it's very difficult for me to say anything other than Muhammad, because I know that one. But Khalid Sheikh Mohammed was the guy who was I think the brains, maybe not the motivation came from Osama bin Laden, according to the official story. And, they never formally charged Osama bin Laden with the September 11th attacks. And it took him 4 years before he allegedly admitted to it. And all these, we've all seen the videos, those crappy videos of him talking.
Yeah.
And he just appears to get younger every time. But
I never noticed that.
But anyway, in 2004, I think is when he first admitted to being somewhat involved. But that's kind of beside the point. He was never formally charged with have anything to do with the 9/11 attacks. He was just on the most wanted list for a couple of embassy bombings, I think, in the late 90s.
So they never formally charged Osama.
Yeah, correct. And he was on the run for almost a decade. How in the world some dude hiding in caves can evade the most advanced infrastructure in the history of mankind, probably.
Yeah.
Except maybe the Romans, but who knows? It's beyond me. How did he avoid us for 10 years? But they killed him in 2011. They allegedly killed him in 2011 with the whole, what is that? The SEAL Team 10? 6. SEAL Team 6.
SEAL Team 6. Even I know that.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff that I've looked over and in my head that I get meshed together. So, like I said, you'll have to excuse the specific details that I may butcher, but the picture is pretty good, I think.
That's nuts.
Yeah, so, and then how did Saddam Hussein get wrapped into all this?
That's what I've always wondered.
Because I think the official story is that he harbored some terrorists, that he was a sympathizer with these extremists, and they were already, I mean, there's so much to unpack with that, but, so we were like, well, he's got to go. So,
yeah, that was...
Went he did.
Everything was focused on Osama for so long, and then suddenly Saddam Hussein just pops up into the picture almost seemingly overnight, which just blew my mind.
Well, he had been on a global stage before with the first Gulf War and all that stuff with Kuwait and all that, but then he did kind of fade for 10 years, and then he got brought back up in 2003. So, yeah. Weird, man. And we didn't understand what was happening. We were kids.
Right. Yeah, we were too young to really get it at that point.
We were in between 2nd and 6th grade when all this was going down in Bush's first year. In Bush's first term.
Right. Yeah, who ended up apprehending Osama bin Laden? Was that Bush or was that...
that was Obama.
Obama, yeah, okay.
That was Barack Obama. He watched it from the Situation Room.
Really?
Yep, and they announced it, and you could still look up videos of when they announced it at Fenway Park. Boston Red Sox. It's really strange. I think it's really strange, but yep.
That's insane. Okay, so we've kind of talked about what happened. We haven't talked about the specific people involved in the planes. What happened to them? What's going on with all that?
What do you mean?
Like the people who actually hijacked the planes. How did that even...
They're all dead.
How did that happen?
Oh, I see what you're saying. What's leading up to it?
Yeah.
So they were... so is it Able Danger? the FBI had been terrorist monitoring like since the 80s. And for some reason, like all these guys got into America, even though through Project Able Danger, there was, which is, y'all can look that up. It was like an intelligence program active in the 80s and 90s, I think. And like pretty much all of these guys have been on the government's radar, yet they still all somehow got into America. Most of them, the 4 pilots had taken like, I think a lot of them went to Florida and taken like amateur pilot lessons.
That's insane. Really? Amateur pilot lessons?
Yeah. And again, all this is on record. And I think it was the dude who flew Flight 77. His instructor, which is from some school in Florida, said he was terrible. Like he couldn't barely fly a Cessna. And there's interviews of him saying this. So, like when you look up the flight path of Flight 77, I mean that dude was descending from cruising altitude at like 500 miles an hour. Flew parallel, like did a 270-degree corkscrew turn as he's descending. Flew parallel with the ground at like 100 feet above the ground for forever, which, if you think about it, is that even possible flying such a huge of a plane, because the air is way thicker down there and bust apart. And then hit the side of the Pentagon, which is only 5 stories tall. Imagine how hard that would be to do. Like the scale of what we're talking about is like running, for anyone who's listening, I apologize, you'll have to just imagine this. It's like something the size of like a jelly bean, just like running 500 miles an hour into the rim of this, into like the lower rim of this.
Wow.
So it's pretty impressive flying for somebody who couldn't fly Cessna.
Yeah.
But they were all like partiers, heavy partiers. Like they were doing cocaine in strip clubs. It didn't seem at all like they were devout Muslim extremists. So much weirdness with the hijackers. And I can't remember the dude who it was it Hanny Hanger was the flights, he was the 77. And then Otto was those are the 2 main ones. Hanny Hanger, the pilot that I just talked about, I believe. I could be wrong on that. John, you should confirm that. And then Muhammad Atta, who flew Flight 11. They took over the stuff with box cutters. Like there was pilot and co-pilot, and then there was 2 muscle. There was allegedly going to be 20 of them, but then one like dropped out at the last second. He missed the flight. Yeah, well, that still counts as dropping out at the last second. So there only ended up being 19.
Okay.
Just crazy. And like I said, Flight 93, they fought back. So that was my attempt to explain the hijacker's background a little bit.
That's insane.
Yeah.
This stuff still blows my mind as to how it even was.
Yeah.
Like how it even came about.
Yeah, most of them were Saudi Arabian citizens. I think 1 or 2 of them was from UAE, maybe. I could be wrong on that. And Muhammad Atta was Egyptian. But most
Egyptian?
Yeah,
I thought they were all supposed to be from like Afghanistan or
no, I don't.
Iraq.
I may put my foot in my mouth, but I don't think any of them were Afghani or Iraqi. Most of them were Saudi Arabian. The vast majority of them. Yeah, weird, isn't it? So why weren't we mad at Saudi Arabia?
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Or Egypt.
I mean,
there's
also tons of FBI contradictions that claim half of these hijackers were still alive and living in Saudi Arabia. I don't know if we can find a video and link that in the show notes. I'm going to have a lot of work to do with these show notes, but
yes, you are.
Yeah, then Muhammad Atta also like supposedly called his dad on September 12th. Like there's a bunch of weird identity things with these hijackers too that quite frankly we don't even have time to get into tonight.
Yeah.
Like y'all can look that up on your own time.
Yeah. So I mean it's well known that there's a large segment of the population that just like with like the moon landing, right? Is like 9/11 was an inside job, right? That's been in like movies and stuff at this point. So I mean you spent probably a year of your life looking into this?
Yeah, hardcore in late 2018. Yeah, I was big into this.
I mean, what do you think about it all? I mean, you just went through from just bare memory, pretty much everything that went down that day, that fateful day in 2001. I mean, what do you think about it all?
It's all
random terrorist attack,
no,
or
it's all
orchestrated, planned event?
Well, either way, it would be orchestrated planned event. But,
That fair enough.
but the official story is total bullcrap. That's what I think about it.
Why?
Oh boy, how long do we got?
As long as you want, buddy.
I mean, you should ask me about the stuff that's on there to help trigger my memory and have some kind of formal structure to this.
I mean, okay.
There's pretty much every aspect of it would breaks down, or there's contrary witness interviews, contrary evidence produced officially that makes no sense. What do you call it? A conflict of interest in the investigations, the conflicts of interest in the ownership of the buildings, in the people that worked at the buildings, and the people that secured the buildings, in just between Bush and the Bin Laden family. And it was a Saudi Arabian family. They're a giant oil millionaire family, and I believe it was H.W. George Bush's father was literally meeting with Osama bin Laden's brother on 9/11.
What?
Yeah, Osama bin Laden he has 7 brothers. The bin Laden is a huge oil magnate family. So is this guy just the black sheep? Or, I mean, what's going on here? And I think the U.S. even paid for flights to get them out of there on September 12th, when every other single flight was grounded, because flights were grounded for 2 or 3 days, maybe. I can't remember.
That's crazy.
I can't remember. I might have butchered that, but they sent a lot of them to that place in Canada. There's a musical about that I actually saw called "Come From Away." That's completely random and beside the point. Saw that on Broadway with Connor and Chuck.
Moving on.
Moving on.
Thank you for that.
Where was I? I just completely distracted myself.
So, I mean, you're talking about stuff that you're saying doesn't quite add up. Parts of the official story. And
it's not parts. Pretty much the whole thing, in my opinion, doesn't add up. Obviously, you can disagree with me. That's fine.
Well, I mean, I just want to know your take on it. So the first thing I remember was discussion of the black boxes on the planes, which I know nothing about black boxes other than it's this thing that's supposed to hold valuable information about what may or may not have happened if you can't recover any information about why the plane crashed. And apparently those, they didn't find them, or they were burnt up, or what's the deal with that?
Right. They never found. Did they never find any of them? I know they didn't find the ones in the Twin Towers. Yeah. Yes, they said, yes, the official story is they never found any of them. Now, those things are made of titanium. Do you understand how strong titanium is? I mean, it's one of the strongest metals, and it can withstand anything. And like every single other airplane crash, they find them. So that right off the bat is weird.
Yeah,
because
that's odd.
You would expect those things out of 4 planes at least to find one of them, especially with the just meticulous combing of everything they did at Ground Zero.
Right.
So very, very odd. Very odd that those didn't get found, or at least they said they didn't get found.
That's insane.
Yeah. Especially when you put that up against the passport that they found. They found one of the hijackers' passport fluttering through the air. Now, how does that make sense? If the titanium black boxes cannot survive the giant fireball of kerosene and the subsequent collapse of 2 of the world's tallest buildings,
right.
How does a passport somehow miraculously make it out of all that and flutter down and an FBI agent happens to see it?
They actually said they found somebody's passport.
Yeah, one of the hijackers. I can't remember which one. Doesn't matter, really. It doesn't matter. It might have been Muhammad Atta, or maybe they found his bag. I think they found. I think they also. This is a weird thing with the hijacker. Is Muhammad Atta's bag somehow got sent to the wrong place, and they found, I don't know, a bunch of stuff in it that didn't make sense. I can't remember that specifically, but
oh my gosh,
yeah, it's weird.
It's the passports falling from the sky.
Yeah, actually, they couldn't find the titanium black boxes.
That's super weird.
It is weird.
So, I mean, what about the thing I hear all the time from people who aren't fans of 9/11, more or less, like people who think it's fake, is jet fuel can't melt steel beams. And, what does that even...
what's
the deal with that?
I think steel melts at 3,000 degrees, more or less, somewhere near there. And like jet fuel is essentially like very refined kerosene, I believe.
Yeah, more or less.
And it only burns at like maybe like 800. Now, these are all approximate numbers. I could be wrong, but I'm sure it's less than the temperature required to melt steel. Like, that's the whole point of making buildings out of steel, is to stop fire from collapsing them. Because obviously if you make it out of wood, it'll burn up. If you make it out of masonry or concrete, fire will weaken that stuff. It'll chip away and it'll all fall. So that's the whole point of steel structures.
Yeah.
Plus, okay, we clearly saw where most of the jet fuel went. It burned up in one big fireball. So how did the fire, I mean, it wasn't even kerosene that was burning. It was just like mostly office equipment, like papers and some furniture. Like, how in the world could the fire get that hot, especially when it's isolated? Like, it's just isolated pockets of fire. There's multiple interviews of firefighters. You can literally listen to their comm links, and they're saying, yeah, there's just isolated. Like, it wasn't even that big of a deal, really. It was just isolated pockets of fire. They were getting everybody. It was obviously a big deal for the people that were above the impact, because they were trapped. I think the South Tower had one stairwell open. I can't remember about the North Tower. But it wasn't even that heavy fire. All of the jet fuel got burned in the giant explosions at the beginning. I mean, you can see where most of it went. It went in a giant fireball.
Yeah.
That burned off most of it. I think that's even admitted by the government. In NIST, the National Institutes for Standards and Technologies, I believe, that did an investigation into the collapse of World Trade Center 1 and 2 and Building 7. So how did it get weakened from fire? If there was very little burning, if it wasn't hot enough to weaken the steel?
I don't know. The only thing I would have to say to that, because I hear people tell me that all the time, right? Like, jet fuel can't melt steel.
People
and that's
tell
all
you that
they'll
all
say.
the time? That's
I mean, I've been told that on a number of occasions by like people I didn't really know all that well. We'll just get to talking and we'll broach the subject, because I don't know why people like to tell me things. Anyway, isn't it possible that, you know, the way like a forge works, right? We're going to force air into this heated chamber that's burning to raise the heat of what's happening, right? Isn't it possible that something along those lines happened, like some kind of concentrated combustion of fuel or something? Isn't that possible, at least?
I guess it's always possible, but you can tell that that's not the way from all the smoke. I mean, smoke is a sign of a poorly...
inefficient fire.
Yeah, like anybody who tries to light fires knows that if you're smoking a bunch, well, then you don't really have that much fire. You're not getting enough oxygen to your fuel, and there was a ton of smoke.
Yeah.
So that lets you know that it's oxygen depleted and it's starved of fuel. So, even if that were true, like the World Trade Centers, where there were 47 core steel columns like going up and basically trusses connecting them to the exterior facade. So it was like basically two buildings in one. How in the world could you get to all 47 of those in a big square? Like they were designed to, even if some of them failed, like you can't get to all of them. The fire can't get to all of them. So how would it be how is it so uniform? Like, fires do not burn uniformly.
Right.
How did the thing collapse so uniformly? And if it did collapse due to fire, how is that possible?
Okay.
Given the lack of fuel and the just symmetry. I mean, the symmetry of it's just crazy.
Yeah. I see your point. The other thing that I've always wondered about is, New York. I've never been there. You've been there. I've never been there.
I've been there twice.
Is supposedly like this really dense city, right?
It's very dense.
One of the most populous cities on Earth. Exceptionally dense as far as like how close buildings and people are to one another.
Yep.
I don't know how dense that particular area is, but it seems I never heard talk of damage in and around that area.
There was some.
Like, if a plane flies into a building and the building falls, I would imagine buildings nearby will also either fall or be damaged to the point that I'm going to hear about it on the news.
Yeah, there was a few. I believe the Marriott Hotel was basically completely destroyed. I think that's World Trade Center 3, actually. There was some bank, and there was some maybe Verizon building. There was like 3 or 4 that got heavily damaged, but really the only one they claimed completely got destroyed from it was 7. World Trade Center 7. So yeah, it's weird. They fell straight down. Like if I was gonna, let's say we've got a big old stack of just basically
Jenga tiles or something.
Well, not Jenga tiles, basically a big lattice. Okay, it's a big like mosquito net or a big wrapped chain link fence.
Okay.
Chain link fence in a tube, like in a cylinder. If I were to like cut part of that off in the middle, or let's just pick some arbitrary point, like you would expect the part that got cut off to fall off one of the sides and what's under it to remain, right?
I mean, generally speaking, now,
like
if the whole thing is connected, right? Then that imbalance, if you cut part of it off, may, if the structure isn't properly anchored, cause the whole thing to fall, right?
No,
just tip over.
Well, first of all, that's not what happened. It fell straight down through itself.
Well, I mean, yeah, but in that particular scenario.
Second of all, I suppose if some of them were not cleanly cut, some of the core columns were not cleanly cut, it might produce enough stress to rip them out of their foundation of their anchor. But that still would not cause a uniform fall straight down on itself.
No.
To tip over to the side.
No, yeah, right.
Like you'd have part of the top falling off and then falling over to the side, or you'd have the whole thing falling over to the side. They both went straight down instantly like that.
Yeah, they did.
That is impossible based on how those things were built. It doesn't make any kind of sense. It's like say you have a bunch of stacks of bricks. Say you've stacked bricks on top of each other, like it's like pushing off the top layer of bricks, but the bottom layer is still going to be there.
Yeah.
You're like, how did it collapse in on itself? Does that make sense? Like,
I mean, that is one of the weird things, and I suggest, like, if you're listening to this, go back and watch some of the footage. Unless it's going to psychologically damage you, go back and take a look at it. Because, and this is one of the areas where I have a hard time, whatever I believe, even playing devil's advocate with people, when you watch the fall of the towers.
Yeah, it looks like,
which is heartbreaking.
It looks like a controlled demolition. It looks like
does.
Like you've seen those videos of everybody set charges in an old building that they're going to blow up. You see the videos, it goes like the squibs, and then the whole thing just goes. That's exactly what it looks like on all 3 of those buildings, by the way.
I haven't seen Tower 7. I haven't seen the collapse.
And that's the weirdest one. We can talk about that in a little while. I mean, it's all weird, but it just looks completely unnatural. Those things should not have fallen straight down in on itself. They should not have fallen that fast. They shouldn't have fallen at all.
The only other thing I would have to say to that is, you are talking about probably some buildings that took an insane amount of planning, preparation, and just meticulous architecture work to try to build these things to make them safe enough to put in the middle of New York City, right?
Yeah, I mean,
it would make sense to me, and I don't know even how this would work. I'm not a structural engineer. I'm not a civil engineer. But it would make sense to me to construct them such that if something traumatic does happen to the building, such that they'll fall, relatively speaking, in a contained fashion so that it doesn't damage other buildings.
Well, they had designed those buildings. There's interviews of the architect who it was 2 guys, I believe. There's interviews of the architect saying they designed it to take a Boeing 707 fully loaded, and multiple of them. Yeah. This will be in our show notes. I watched this video today, actually. Like, because there was an incident in like 1940 something where the plane flew into the side of the Empire State Building. Like, it was an accident. It was allegedly an accident, but it was fog. Dude couldn't see where he was going.
Wait. Hold up. A plane flew into the side of the Empire State Building?
Yeah, in the 40s, late 40s, mid to late 40s. Yeah.
Did anybody else know about that? I didn't know about that.
Well, now you
know
do.
About that?
So the architects for the World Trade Center specifically designed them with that in mind, that, well, if a plane, the biggest plane at the time, a Boeing 707, which is 767s, I believe, were the planes that allegedly hit the World Trade Center.
Okay.
Which 707s are a little smaller, but they're decently comparable size.
Okay.
And plus, planes only are loaded with enough fuel, so they weren't like super loaded down. So it was probably very similar in weight, is my point with that. But they were designed to take that because while they were designing these buildings, these architects, that had recently, within the past like 20 years, happened to the Empire State Building. So they're like,
wow.
Well, we don't want somebody else getting lost in the fog and slamming into our building, so let's design it specifically in mind to where it can take multiple plane hits. And that we will link that in the show notes because I've watched that today.
That's an insane thing to have to consider. Like, I can't imagine having to build a building and being like, hey, well, what happens if a plane hits this? How do we plan for that eventuality?
Well, they planned for it. They literally, from the architects themselves.
Oh my gosh. Okay, that's crazy. I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that. So, well, I mean, let's talk about the debris, the rubble. For weeks, months afterwards, there were reports, and I say I don't remember a lot of this. It's just flashes, but like for months afterwards, maybe even years, there were reports of, I don't know how long. There were reports of, digging through the rubble at ground zero.
I mean, so much I can say about the rubble. For one, there really wasn't that much of it. I mean, the whole thing got pulverized into dust.
I mean, that makes sense if it was burning, right?
I mean, really? Does fire pulverize concrete into dust?
Okay, fair enough.
Like basically the entire building turned into smoke and it was breathed in by people. Like, if a building falls, it's not going to pulverize itself. It'd be huge. I mean, obviously there were some chunks, but relatively speaking, the ground zero site was even from the moment it fell, didn't have as much rubble as it should. I believe only like there was one part of the stairwell. It's like an iconic picture, and I don't remember what tower it was, but there was one part of the steel core that was still standing at the end, and I think somebody survived in that when the building fell, and it was only like 5 stories tall. But most of the rubble that was not steel, most of basically the filling or like the concrete was pulverized into dust instantly. And you see those videos of people running away from the collapse, and there's just like this cloud behind them. Like, how does that happen? How does that happen? Seriously.
I mean, anytime
it
you have
almost looks like a
something like
volcano.
that, there's going to be a cloud of, like, well, I don't know if dust is the right word, but like there's going to be a cloud of smoke and dust and
but
stuff like that.
But like that was huge. The whole thing, it was too big.
I mean, is there a standard for how big a dust cloud should be?
Well, think about this. Think about it logically, Carson. Why were there not huge chunks of concrete, and how did it get so fine? How did the particles get so fine? Like, you need to go look up how pulverized everything was. It's unnatural. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, I would have to take your word for that. I haven't taken a look at the footage of the rubble specifically. I mean, it makes sense to me that if that amount of weight falls on, let's say, concrete, that there's going to be a degree of pulverization, like almost like a mortar and pestle, you know?
Yeah, but then you've got to think again, how is it falling through itself?
Yeah, I mean, that's the really weird thing. That's the big thing, is the fact that it did seemingly collapse in on itself.
I mean, you can just look. You can look at it. It did collapse in on itself. It was seemingly about it. All 3 of them did.
Right.
But also there were fires burning for weeks at the bottom. Like they would be digging stuff up when they were cleaning this up. I think they cleaned it by 2002 sometime. But they were digging stuff up like in December, like 3 months after this, and there were still raging infernos under there.
Yeah.
Like, how is that possible from jet fuel and papers and office furniture?
Yeah.
Like, it's not. They shipped all the steel off to China to, I could butcher it. Wasn't it something Kills landfill that they, the landfill they sent it to had a weird name. And then they shipped it to China. all the steel. So like before it could really be investigated by independent people, by independent firms.
Why would you ship the steel off to China?
Yeah, I mean, good point. Because maybe they don't want people to investigate it. Maybe it was laced with thermite. I mean, what else would still be causing those intense fires? What else would even enable the thing to fall in on itself unless they were literally like cut every single column at the same time like lightsabers? That's what, if anybody's ever seen videos of thermite, look that up. Like, it will slice through steel like butter. It's like a charge that just goes shoot, like Qui-Gon Jinn in episode 1, right through the stuff.
You're such a nerd.
And the only way that thing, both those all three of the towers would fall like that is if every single one of those core columns at every single juncture was laced with that, and they just went boom, 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 cut them all basically instantly, and the thing fell in on itself. That's what had to happen. Because there is no other way it could fall in on itself. That's what I think.
That's a lot, dude.
I mean, it is a lot, but it's the only thing that makes sense because of how those things fell. I mean, you take especially building number 7. Okay, let's talk about that for a little bit. That one, there was fire burning intermittently on one floor for a few hours. I mean, there has never, ever in the history of the world been steel frame skyscrapers collapsed due to fire. I mean, in 2007, some tower in the Windsor Tower in Madrid, Spain, it burned for like 20 hours.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And it still stood.
How close is that to the other 2 towers? How close was that?
I think it was the farthest one away, actually. Wasn't it? John, my invisible producer, John, doesn't know. I mean, it did get hit a little bit.
Okay.
By falling chunks.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it didn't knock it down initially. And there was barely any fire burning. There's videos of a Silverstein. Larry Silverstein was the guy who managed the World Trade Center complex, and there's videos of him saying that the fire had just got too hot and we have to pull the building. Get all the firefighters out of there. We got to pull the building. Like, well, what does that mean? That makes it seem like you're going to knock it down. There's videos of even some news anchors. Initially, when they were looking at it falling, they were like, well, that looks like a controlled demolition, one of those controlled demolitions that you see on TV. We can link to that. We'll find that. There's the I think it's the BBC talking about building number 7 falling 20 minutes before it fell with it still in the background.
What?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. We'll link to that. You can look at that.
You're telling me right now.
It's a woman. She's like, we just gotten reports that the Solomon Brother building.
You should not do the accent.
That's what they called building number 7, Solomon Brother building, which housed the SEC, which housed Secret Service, lots of feds in that building.
Oh, wow. The SEC, the Security and the Exchange Commission,
yes.
Not the football conference.
Right.
Okay.
Not the Southeastern Conference, which is headquartered in Birmingham. Boy, Tennessee's had a bad year. But anyway, she was like, we've just got reports that building has fallen, and indeed it has, as it's right behind her. So that's weird.
I need to see that.
Yeah. When you look at the thing falling, it like falls in the middle and just goes directly down. It looks totally like a controlled demolition. But NIST claims that it fell due to structural failures. Like, there's a study, Fairbanks, University of Fairbanks in Alaska study too, that totally refutes all that. We'll link that. I'm gonna, with this, like I said at the beginning, we're gonna have a frick ton of links.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, just so many inconsistencies. I mean, we've barely scratched the surface. We've only talked about New York, not to mention the Pentagon.
Yeah, I was gonna say, let's talk a little bit about the Pentagon, because
oh man, dude,
I don't know what went on there at all.
We'll talk about all the people involved in this at the very end as we close, but the entry hole, it's tiny. It's not very big. You see the pictures.
What do you mean entry
like
hole?
the entry hole, the wound, if you will, in the Pentagon, like initially before the front fell. Like there's a few, like I think it took like, I don't know, like an hour for the thing to fall. But the initial entry wound, like it doesn't look like a plane slammed into that. It's very concentrated. It only affected, I don't know, like maybe like 7 windows. Like a plane has a giant wingspan. You'd expect it to be, I don't know, I could be butchering this, but the entry hole looks too small for a plane to hit initially. I'm not talking about after the whole front fell off, because obviously that is a huge gaping monstrosity. Donald Rumsfeld, was it Rumsfeld? He was the Secretary of Defense under Bush. Big connections with Raytheon. He had announced, I think it was the day before, it was either September 9th or September 10th, that the Pentagon was missing like $1 trillion for something. And then...
It's a lot of money to just misplace.
Yeah. Now, you can look that press conference up. If I can remember, I'll link that too. But just trust me on that. That happened. And guess where that plane hit? The Pentagon's accounting department, which was under renovation at the time. I think only like 100 and something people died at the Pentagon. It hit the part that was under renovation, and very few people were there, and it was accounting. After they had immediately announced that there was $100 trillion missing.
You just said $1 trillion?
Yeah, whatever. A ton of money. Does it even matter? I mean, can we even comprehend that much money?
I can't.
There's a ton of money missing. So, weird. I've already mentioned the pictures. It took them like multiple years to even release pictures, and the pictures that they released are very crappy. You can see something approaching from the top right of the frame. It doesn't. It kind of looks like a plane, maybe. It doesn't really look like a plane, and there's only like 3 frames of it. Lots of people claim. I'm no video expert, so I have no idea, but lots of smart people claim it's been tampered with. It does look terrible. I mean, you're talking about the most secure building in the world with cameras everywhere. How in the world can we only get like 3 frames of something hitting the Pentagon, something fuzzy and gray hitting the Pentagon? There's multiple interviews with like officers there that claim they saw the thing approaching from like west to east on the north side of the Pentagon, which like completely contradicts the official story. Like there's so many inconsistencies. I could go on forever about the inconsistencies in all of this, with every single one of with all four of the flights. Just the flight itself. How in the world can he make this Hanny Hanjour, who's allegedly can't fly a Cessna? How can he make a 270-degree corkscrew turn, descending 3,000 feet at 500 miles an hour, and fly perfectly into, like we've already said before, like basically flying into nothing. Planes can't even go that fast on the ground. Like they're too heavy; it'll break apart. The reason they extend all the flaps and go slower, that close to there's a reason cruising altitude exists. Like if you're any lower than that, then the air resistance is too great, and then your plane just blows apart. Like they can't physically fly that fast. That big of a plane that low to the ground, it's impossible. I mean, he was going at cruising speed at like 500 miles an hour. Like he's either the luckiest guy in the world or something else is going on. Like he's not that good of a pilot. So many inconsistencies, and we're like I said, we're just scratching the surface. I don't know. What do you think about that? I kind of ranted a little bit there.
A little bit, but I mean, it was fine. That's just so much.
Yeah, it's a ton. It's a ton to take in.
How any one person is supposed to make it through all that and make sense of it, I have no idea.
No, it takes forever. It takes literally months and into years of looking into all the different testimonies. We haven't even got into the testimonies, to the commission report, to all the people involved in this. We can talk about that a little bit at the end, and then the reason why we're doing this on Christmas. I want to end with that. How long has it been going?
I don't know. I didn't start a timer.
Well, let me talk about briefly, if that's okay with you. If I missed it. Well, Flight 93, then we'll talk about the people.
Okay. Lay it on me.
Flight 93, that's the one that crashed. How is it possible to make cell phone calls at cruising altitude? especially in 2001. Like it's almost, you can't do it now.
I don't know. I thought they always told you to turn off your phone on the plane or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I know recently I went to New York last year, a year and a half ago. Like my phone would work till about 2,000 feet, and then it wouldn't. And so, how in the world in 2001 can you have people calling from cell phones to their loved ones? Like, because that's what happened in Flight 93. Allegedly, like that's how they knew that they had fought back, because Todd Beamer discusses it with his wife, and he was like, we're organizing some resistance. They've stabbed somebody on this plane. Me and a couple other passengers are going to storm the cockpit and fight back. And the last words he says was like, let's roll. And that became like the patriotic mantra for when they were talking about all this. But how can you make a phone call?
I mean, I don't know. I assume they were low enough to do so. I mean, that's the only logical assumption there, right?
Well, again, not if they're flying that fast. Like if they're flying, because they obviously went from, I can't remember if they took off from Boston Logan or not, but they went off from wherever they took off from to crashing in Shanksville, Pennsylvania in a certain amount of time. So you can calculate how fast they were going. They could, if they were going fast enough for that to happen, then they couldn't be low enough to make a phone call, because planes cannot fly that low that fast. Right? Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
So how is it possible to make a phone call? It's it's hard enough now. In 2001, like your cell phone was like it was this big. It was a giant brick. Most people didn't even have them.
Flip phones, man.
I think
flip phones a thing in 2001?
That was before flip phones. Like that was like Nokia phones. Like flip phones were probably approximately 2004, maybe, if I remember.
Dude.
Until like 2009.
Those were the
iPhone
days.
Came out.
Playing Snake on one of those old Nokia phones,
dude.
man. That's the definition of bliss.
I mean, they were bricks, that's for sure. But, like,
We've gotten off topic.
We have. But it's just how you're going to make a phone call. I mean, NORAD, what does NORAD stand for? It's like a North American Regional Air Defense thing. That's some of the acronyms. On 9/11, they were playing war games involving hijacked planes taking over, and it just so happens that as they were doing their war game simulation, what they were actually simulating happened. So so my point with that is, like, they stood down on everything, because they knew that planes were in the air. They knew that they were deviating from their flight paths, but they thought it was part of their simulation. Like, there's testimony on this in the 9/11. I think it might not be in the commission report, but there's interviews of these guys saying this. Like, that's so sketchy. Like, why wouldn't these planes have gotten shot down? Like, they can scramble fighters in an instant. Yet they were flying rogue for over an hour. And you're telling me the most advanced infrastructure in the world didn't do anything about it?
That is a little crazy.
I mean, there's Norman Mineta's testimony in the 9/11 Commission when he's talking to Dick Cheney, when he was like, the flight is 15 miles from the Pentagon. The flight is 10 miles. Do you want me to do anything about it, sir? And Dick Cheney was like, no. So it's super weird.
That is a little odd. Like, you would think, like, the Pentagon being one of our most important buildings here in the States, you'd think there would be some kind of defense system set up to keep it from getting hit by a plane.
Yeah, well, there is. My point is they just like completely stood down, and they knew about it. Specifically Norman Mineta's testimony. He was the Secretary of Transportation under Bush. Y'all can look. We'll have a link to that in the show notes as well, probably. Definitely. It's an important testimony.
Yeah.
But Flight 93, there's all kind. We'll end with this, and I'll talk about the people, so I don't rant for too long.
I think we're already at too long. Keep going.
Well, like, there's just so much stuff. It's an endless rabbit hole, everyone. Endless rabbit hole. Multiple witnesses report seeing like a white drone-ish plane in the air around the time of the Shanksville crash. I put that in quotation marks because even that's weird enough in itself, because there's like no plane parts. There's like a small burn in the ground, and then they found like debris like stretched out over like many miles, and some that fell in a lake. And they never found the black box on that either. So just super inconsistent. It did look like a plane crash. Like, same thing for the Pentagon too. Like you would expect in every plane crash ever, there's some residual debris. Like there's crushed parts of the fuselage. You can tell for the most part that, yeah, it's super battered and bad looking, but this was a plane. Like in the Shanksville crash and in the Pentagon, there's like random strips of like metal. There's nothing that would identify itself as, oh, this is a plane. It's just like basically just a big explosion in both places. I think there's specifically some woman testimony about that white plane. I'm sorry I can't remember all the details. It's a ton to take in, but I don't know if they shot, if like people rebelled, NORAD, or people went against their commanding officer and shot Shanksville down. If there was even a plane to begin with. I mean, there's also conflicting interviews. Excuse me, I just lost my voice there. That was weird. Could you get some water for me, John, so I don't just completely
Here,
collapse?
I'll grab it. You keep talking.
Yeah. There's also, I think, some flight attendant interviews where they were talking about all these planes intersect in Cleveland, and they all land at the Cleveland airport, and then are replaced with different planes. I haven't looked into that too much, so I'm not 100% sure about that. But if that's the case, that's awful. Even looking at the footage of the planes that hit the Twin Towers, you can't really see any identifying things on any of them. It's just a big gray blob that may or may not look like a plane. It's very crappy quality. Why aren't there way more pictures of it? So I don't know. Yeah, I talk while I drink this so my voice doesn't leave me.
I mean, that's stuff that I always wondered about. Even having lived through it, I wasn't one of those people that I didn't have a lot of questions. You know, I was in second grade and I had a lot of questions afterwards. But I do remember just, I don't know, feeling a little off about it.
It's a cover-up from start to finish. Bush and Cheney in the 9/11 Commission, they wouldn't testify in the open. They testified together. The whole commission report was filled. It was like the Warren Commission for JFK. It was filled with insiders, with people who stood to gain financially from 9/11, with all the Raytheon and Boeing and all the defense contracts that came from it. Larry Silverstein, he was either the owner or the manager or the dude that took out the lease. I can't remember. But he took out a giant insurance policy in July of 2001. So this is 2 months before.
Yeah.
Covering both the buildings up to like $2 billion, specifically included for acts of terrorism. Specifically, that was in the insurance policy.
That was the big thing that made me wonder about the whole ordeal, because that just sounds like a giant case of insurance fraud to me.
Yeah, I mean, there's multiple layers to it, but he made a ton of money off those buildings falling. Either he's just extremely lucky, or he knew about it at the very least. President Bush's brother, he has a few brothers. Jeb is one of them, but not Jeb. Marvin Bush.
That's an unfortunate name.
Yeah. He was head of the security for the Twin Towers, which had recently changed. They had
really
in 2001. It was either late 2000 or sometime in 2001. The security for the buildings changed to Securo something, maybe. But Marvin Bush was the head of that, the president's brother. There's multiple reports of the weeks and days leading up to the event. Sorry about that. I received a text. That was rude of me. Multiple reports of power outages.
Thanks for narrating that.
Power outages on like September 6th. Elevator maintenance going on for months beforehand. Just like super sketchy.
Isn't that just like normal stuff though?
I don't know. Is it? I mean,
I certainly don't know.
Thermite can be painted. Is from what I understand. So like,
So what you're trying to get at is that perhaps that was being
Yes.
painted on
Yes.
at the time.
yes, there is ample
What you're trying
opportunity.
to say.
Yes, with all the inside connections from the security, from the owners of the building, to set it up without anyone ever even knowing, and without even the people that were doing it might not even be aware. I mean, they might have been told, yeah, we're painting this anti-rust, this anti-corrosion stuff on it. I mean, there'd be very few people that even would know what was going on. There were many people that day who conveniently missed work. I know Silverstein and his sons, I think either his son or his daughter, bunch of people just happened to not be there that day.
Yeah.
I should have researched that more in detail, but like I said, all y'all can look that up. What was that just fell?
It was a piece of paper. We're okay.
Okay, we're okay. You can look that up for yourself. What else am I missing as far as people-wise? I mean, Donald Rumsfeld, the Secretary of Defense, was running around with a stretcher on the front lawn of the Pentagon. So at the time, Bush was in the air in Air Force One, and he flew around for like 4 hours and was completely AWOL after he had been at that elementary school, which he also claimed he saw the first tower get hit on TV, which is possible because no one saw the first tower get hit on TV because no one expected anything to happen. Yeah. So either he's just an idiot and he was mistaken, or something else is going on. I think he said that. He said that twice. He said that on 2 different occasions.
I miss George Bush memes, man.
Oh, dude, whatever. Don't even get me started.
Well, so that's
yeah, they are funny.
That's another thing that didn't quite make a ton of sense to me. Is if I get like the whole protect the president, send him up, like get him away from the area type thing, but why, if planes are flying into buildings,
yes,
throw up the president in a plane?
Yes, and at the same time, the third most important person in America, Donald Rumsfeld,
Bill Gates,
is running around on the front lawn of the Pentagon with a stretcher, and we like nobody has any idea. There could be more stuff coming. There could be like a straight up invasion from the Middle East. I mean, like people had no idea what was happening that day. In retrospective, we know what happened, so it's like, yeah, there's really no big deal. It was over after the Pentagon got hit, but they had no idea.
Well, I mean,
they had no idea that it wasn't a completely coordinated thing and hitting every single city in America. It was mass pandemonium.
Yeah.
So why in the world would some of the most important people in America be running around like chickens with their head cut off?
I mean, you lose your. In all fairness, you're going to lose your head in a situation like that. If this is stuff you're in charge of, you're not exactly going to be calm, cool, and collected in
these
that
people,
moment.
But Carson, these people are military men. They have strict protocols for them to follow, and they follow them like to the T every single time, 100%. Like, it doesn't make sense. None of it makes sense.
Dang.
Yeah, and I tell you, we have just scratched the surface. Like, a good thing for everyone to watch is Loose Change. Excellent, regardless of what you think about Alex Jones. It's an excellent documentary about a lot of the inconsistencies in the 9/11 story. Excellent summary. There's architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth. I think Richard Gage is the head of that. Like, he's got so many lectures where he just points out just the blatant, like, illogicalness, like physically, of how these things fall. There's so many different groups that have been suppressed and ridiculed in the media for being conspiracy theorists, or for being like or for being like insensitive to the victims, when like that's not the truth at all. They want the truth about what actually happened to the victims. That's a good. I think we should pause there for a second, because regardless of what you believe or what information you've uncovered or what have you about a situation like this, it's very easy to react in anger against somebody who either does or doesn't believe what you believe. And hopefully, at their core, what they're trying to do is uncover truth, so that those people can have justice.
Whatever semblance of justice still remains in this country. And I think, hopefully, that'll help for some people put things in perspective, because it's hard. Things like that are very emotional, even 19 years later.
Yeah.
There are people who still get really emotional about it, and I understand why.
Yeah, but emotional, like we've said over and over again, lowest form, man. Like,
be that as it may,
we have to be. You have to, if you want to find the truth in anything, as bad as any event is, you have to look past the emotions of it and examine it logically.
I mean,
I know that's easier said than done.
I was going to say, yeah.
It's obviously easier said than done, but allowing emotion to, on both ends, like obviously I think the whole thing is nonsense, but if I can't engage with somebody who believes the official story because I get frustrated with them that they believe what I believe to be nonsense, and that's failing just as much as they're not being able to listen to different perspectives just because I don't agree with what the government tells us and the news tells us. So it's a two-way street, and it's an important part of trying to determine the truth in this life. And we've beaten that dead horse over and over again, but it's just so important because it's so lacking these days.
Right. So let's take a second here. It's Christmas, and we're talking about 9/11.
That's right. This is our Christmas special.
It's Christmas.
What? How does that make sense?
And so, I mean, that's something that's really been on your mind for a couple of months now.
Yeah, you got that right.
Talk about it. So, well, let's take a beat here. So, obviously, you and I grew up in a pretty Orthodox Christian.
I wouldn't say that. Very Protestant Christian.
Protestant Christian. What did I say? Orthodox Christian. Whatever. Yeah. They all blend together for me. We grew up in very Southern Christian households, right, here in the States.
Yes, very conservative.
And here, obviously, we still celebrate Christmas, but there's all this talk about how Christmas wasn't Jesus' real birthday, so you better not celebrate Christmas down here.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's crazy.
Yeah, and we touched on it in our episode number 9 about, just how commercialized Christmas has become and how just about Jesus it is. Did that make sense? About how?
No, it's not. It's about freaking, I don't know, eating tons of sugar,
indulgence, consumerism, blah, blah, blah. We've already talked about that.
What in the world does this have to do with 9/11?
Well, that to me is one of the most interesting parts about this. It has everything to do with 9/11 in my opinion, because I think it is possible, based on a certain passage in the Bible and using the stars and the constant nature of the stars, either apparent or actual rotation, depending on how you think about that, as a clock, right?
Okay.
Using signs of the zodiac, which exist.
I'm a Leo.
There is. Yes, I am. I'm Aries. There should be no controversy to that. There are constellations in the sky, and they move in a regular pattern. If anyone doesn't believe that, then you're just dumb, because that's the truth. All right, so you can an interpretation of Revelation 12, which I'm going to read in just a second, could lead you to believe certain things. Okay?
Okay.
So with that in mind, I'm going to grab the Bible, which is right here beside me. I thought it was. Here it is.
You're doing a great narration of your actions right now.
Yes.
Very exciting.
I'll break the fourth wall, staring at the camera, reading the Bible, everyone.
Are you going to announce it like they do in church?
What do you mean?
Like
today I will be reading Revelation chapter 12, like we're taught in lunch to leaders.
Yeah, I always hated that.
Yeah.
Very much.
All right, well, Revelation chapter 12, verse 7 is extremely interesting, but I'm going to stop at verse 6.
You're going to start at verse 1?
I'm going to start at Revelation 12, 1 through 6, okay? And this is coming from the New King James Version, for anyone who's curious or cares about that.
So no one. Go ahead.
Well, I think translation is important, but for this, it's pretty easy to hash out what is being said here. Revelation chapter 12, 1 through 6. Now a great sign appeared in heaven. You could take... I'll just read it and then Sorry. Now a great sign appeared in heaven. A woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a garland of 12 stars. Then, being with child, she cried out in labor and in pain to give birth. And another sign appeared in heaven. Behold, a great fiery red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 diadems on his heads. His tail drew a third of the stars of heaven and threw them to earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who was ready to give birth to devour her child is capitalized, as soon as it was born. She bore a male child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up to God and his throne. Then the woman fled into the wilderness, where she had a place prepared by God that they would feed her there for 1,260 days. Weirdly specific. So,
That is super specific.
Yeah, we're not biblical scholars. We're just going to say this. But we're also free-thinking men, and we're allowed to have opinions, as are you, the audience. I think there's multiple layers to this. Metaphysical, physical, metaphysical, spiritual, whatever you want to call it. A lot of this, and Michael Heiser, he's a professor at the formerly a professor at the University of Wisconsin, doctor. He's got a great video on this that we will once again link in the show notes. Long story short, one of the levels interpretation of this,
I'm listening. Sorry,
is talking about constellations in the sky. Like, I'll just read it. Like,
12,
a woman, a great sign appeared in heaven. So that'd be talking about the sky. A woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet. Well, what's a woman constellation? Virgo. Wouldn't that fit with the Virgin Mary?
Woman clothed with the sun. So wouldn't that be during the daytime?
The sun is in a certain... I don't understand astronomy, but the sun can be in certain positions.
I'm glad we're listening to you.
Within constellations. Michael Heiser would do a much better job explaining that than I would. But
let's have him on.
Oh yeah, if that happened, that'd be a miracle. His podcast is called the Naked Bible Podcast for anyone who wants to listen to it. I don't know. I have mixed opinions on him, but I think
moving on.
I think he's dead right on this. It makes a lot of sense. But anyway, the moon under her feet, and on her head a garland of 12 stars. So that could be talking about Virgo. Okay? And then another great sign appeared in heaven. Behold, a great fiery red dragon. All right, so in ancient times, there's, everyone knows, well, not everyone knows, but there's Libra and there's Scorpio in modern day constellations, modern day astronomy. In ancient times, those were combined into one constellation called the dragon.
Okay.
So it could be talking about that constellation appearing in a certain place in relation to the Virgo or the Virgin or the woman giving birth as described in this. Long story short, there is a window for all these things to be lined up right, with the sun in the right, clothed in her, symbolizing pregnancy, like the sun in her symbolizing pregnancy, with the moon at her feet, and with the dragon in whatever place it's got to be in, the dragon being Scorpio and
Virgo.
Libra.
Libra, sorry.
Virgo is the Virgin Mary. So all these things happened, I think probably 3 times since the birth of, or since the BC, since around 0 AD, since circa 0 AD.
Since time was changed, since we changed the letters, BC to AD.
And one of them fits very well for the birth of Christ. There's tons of software, because the sky is constant, okay? It does the same thing year after year, over and over again. We can predict every single eclipse. Like just yesterday or 2 days ago.
The
alignment of Jupiter and Saturn.
Right. Star of Bethlehem or whatever.
That last happened in 1200. And we can predict it's going to be another 800 years and it'll happen again. It's constant. It's math.
Yeah.
My point with that is you can forward track and backtrack the movement of the skies.
Right.
And all these things aligned and happened at a specific date that you can calculate on a computer software called Stellarium, all other softwares, probably without a software. I am not an astronomer.
That'd be a lot of paper.
But anyway, it happened in a 40-minute window on a specific date in 3 BC. Now, Carson, take one guess as to what that date was. It's why we're talking about...
Yeah, well, just to
9/11, 3 BC.
Just to stop there for a second. One of the first things you learn, growing up in church, is that Jesus probably wasn't born on 0 AD, right?
Right.
He was probably born either a little before or a little after.
Right. And he probably wasn't born in the winter, because why would shepherds be out? Because it's cold in Israel in the winter. It snows. It's freezing.
I've never been to Israel, but I assume when people tell me that,
it's on a similar latitude as to Tennessee.
Okay, so it's cold there during the
winter. On Christmas Day, 19 degrees tomorrow?
Right. Yeah. So you're saying, obviously, Jesus wasn't born in the wintertime, because that wouldn't make sense.
Yeah.
Obviously, he wasn't born exactly on 0 AD. Like, that's relatively obvious just from texts that people have read and analyzed, right?
Yeah, because there's the whole Augustus calling the census thing, and then
Right.
and then there's Caesar, not Caesar. Herod the Great, and his death and reign, and his stepson Herod Antipas. But yeah, it's close to 0 AD.
Yeah.
But
So
the
you're
monks
saying this
didn't quite
guy,
get it right.
you're saying this guy, what's it, Heiser,
Yeah,
is suggesting it was when?
3 BC, September 11th, 3 BC.
September 11th, 3 BC.
Yeah.
So what is that? I mean, I get
Like-
that those are the same days, like September 11th being the same day then and being the same, like the same day in 20.
I'll comment on that in
2001.
just a second. Also, September 11th is like the start of the Jewish New Year, or very close to the start of the Jewish New Year. I think
okay.
it's called Tishri 1.
So it would have been a significant date
Yeah,
back then.
it'd been a significant day back then. That's when they would during the time of the United Kingdom, and not like UK, like Solomon, David. During that time, and afterwards, that's when they would like inaugurate, for lack of a better word, or anoint a new king. So it had
Okay.
Jewish significance
Okay.
as far as royalty.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, what are the odds of that?
I mean, one in 365, right?
366 sometimes, but yeah. Leap year.
Thank you for that.
But it clearly has significance, okay? Clearly.
That's the start of the Jewish New Year, really?
Yeah, I mean, it goes beyond
crazy.
September 11, 2001. What do you do if I were to bash your head in right now? Like, somebody would call.
911?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I mean, that was a big thing even back then. It was like they must have planned this to
did
be
they
the
do that
same
on
as
purpose?
911. So, I mean, you're suggesting, and I think this is a pretty big thing to suggest, that somebody intentionally planned it to be on Jesus' birthday. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And we're not going to talk about this tonight because it would take too long. But this goes beyond just a profit money military industrial complex scheme to make money from war.
You think so?
I think so. And you don't have to agree with me. I just challenge everyone to just listen to what I say, and if you don't like it, then turn it off. I mean, seriously. But there's something deeply spiritual, in a bad way, obviously, about this event. And
I mean, there's nothing good about the event. I think we can agree on that.
yeah, but it's more than just. It's more than just. It's not some random terrorists that hate America from their freedom. In my opinion, it's not even a bunch of insiders in the government that want to make money off of war. It goes even beyond that. And maybe next year. Excuse me, I got the hiccups now. At Christmas time, we can talk about maybe some of the more spiritual aspects of it. But it's just. Regardless of your thoughts on any of that, it was a significant event. It was bad. And to just take everything at face value without first investigating it, I think is doing it a disservice to all the people that died and all the people that were affected by 9/11, 2001.
Yeah, because that was a lot of people.
Yeah, it was 2,977, I think.
Oh my
the
gosh.
final tally.
That's heavy. Even now, even almost 20 years later, that's heavy.
Yep. People go to work and they just didn't come back.
Oh my gosh.
So, I don't know. That's my thoughts on it. Obviously, it's controversial. But, well, we need a little controversy, don't we?
Man. All right. Anything else you want to say before we wrap this up?
Nope. I just want to challenge everybody to not get angry, to investigate a lot of the videos that we're going to link in the show notes, and decide for yourself. That's the most important thing.
That's the big thing.
Don't let CNN, Fox News, NIST, the 9/11 Commission, don't let Robert, don't let Carson, don't let any of us decide for you what you think about any of these significant events, not just 9/11. It's like anything that is presented to us in the news, or that affect our lives in American society. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
Like, you gotta be a free thinker. You just have to. Like, because what vestige of freedom exists if you're not thinking?
Yeah.
Like, you're totally controlled if you don't ever even put, like, because there's so much more to life than just doing what you're told, following everything you see, and just like,
Yeah.
like, it's so important. And I guess that's what I wanted to end on before we do our plugs.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really heavy thing to be thinking about around Christmas time, and I hate that a little bit, but especially this time of year when consumerism is out the window.
Yes.
And all you're thinking about is, what am I going to get my kids? What am I going to get my wife? What am I going to, or this year, how am I even going to celebrate Christmas?
Yeah.
It's good to sit down and take a second and step back.
Yeah.
And think about the stuff that's really important.
Yeah, there's a bigger picture to life.
And so, I hate to be a Debbie Downer, but, sometimes that happens.
Yeah, but quite honestly, there can be good that comes from this kind of close examination, and it can tell you a lot of things about yourself.
Yeah.
But that's a song for another time, I suppose.
For sure. All right, guys. Merry Christmas. A very sad Merry Christmas, but Merry Christmas. Hopefully your Christmas is happier than our discussion here today. Thank you for listening. Thank you for hanging out with us during this horrible, horrible, horrible 2020.
It's been rough.
Yeah, it hasn't been any fun at all. Hopefully we've been able to maybe make it a little less miserable, but probably not. Check out all of our socials, the Instagram, the Facebook,
Twitter,
whatever else people are on.
Yeah, Twitter.
Listen to us wherever podcasts are sold.
Google Play, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc.
Anything else, Murph?
Patreon and Subscribestar. If anybody wants to give us money, I will take it. Links.
Check out FNX if you need fitness
That's
supplements.
Right. We're going to record a new blurb that's not so long eventually.
Yeah.
Sorry for people who have to suffer through that multiple times. We'll fix it.
Yeah, it's been rough.
But yeah, it's been good. You gonna write on your blog? I'm gonna mention that every
sometime
time.
soon.
Okay, sometime soon. As the previous 9 times Carson said that.
It's coming. It's coming eventually.
Anything else?
No. Thank you for listening, guys. Thanks for sticking with us during 2020. And you know what? We'll see you here soon.
Yeah, we'll have more stuff coming down the road. Should be a good new year.
All right, Murph. It's been good, buddy.
Amen.